One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to krystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Okay, first things first, we cannot even start anything today without first talking about the fact that today, Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast is officially out into the world. Oh my goodness. This has been a project that has been at least a year in the making. And I'm just so excited that today is the day. It is officially book launch day. So you're going to hear me talking about it all today, this whole week. If you're listening to this later, like years from now, you'll probably still hear me talking about this book because I'm so excited about it. So you can go to thebestpodcastbook.com to order Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast, a step-by-step guide to creating a podcast your audience craves. I'm so excited about it, but I had to preface this entire episode because today we are going to talk about turning your podcast content into a book. What does that look like? Where do you even get started? And what are some of the tips and strategies that I have to share with you today that I absolutely used in my own book? So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Krystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? Okay, so first things first, like I said, we are talking about turning podcast content into a book. And I have 7 steps to share with you today, but really there are 6 and kind of like a 0. There's a step 0. But for the purposes of the podcast and naming and titles and all that stuff, we're just going to say 7 steps to turn your podcast content into a book. But just know that the very first step, it is a requirement. You cannot even start to think about turning your podcast content or any kind of content for that matter into a book until you have that. So I'm going to run through these kind of real high level, and then we're going to dig into the meat of each one of them. But the first one is you need enough relevant content. Like, that's why it's number one, like enough relevant and tested content. The second is it's kind of a two-part one, and it's planning. So number two is you have to plan out your journey from start to finish. We'll get into that. 3 is add more personal touch in stories. 4, we get into the creation mode. So actually transcribing your audio and editing it. And then 5 is piecing it all together, editing, reviewing. And I'll talk about that process. 6 is actually launching it. And 7 is promoting it. So if you look at this, like these 7 steps, very high level, you see the same framework that I use for start, launch, and market a podcast, right? We're doing the exact same thing, but with a book. And I know there's a lot of people listening that you are an online entrepreneur, like you are creating a business, and you're like, I don't know if I would ever make a book, right? Like that just sounds like so much work. You sit down from start to finish and you create this. Guys, that is not what I did. I did not sit down and like lock myself in a room with my laptop for a week straight. No. Maybe that's what Stephen King does whenever he cranks out, his novels and everything. But that is not what I did. And it's not what I suggest you do either. So we're going to just dive into step 1, because you do need enough relevant and tested content before you can ever think about creating a book. And the reason why I say that is because that, my friends, is what makes this whole process so much easier. Like if I was trying to create content, right? Like I had zero content. I'm brand new baby entrepreneur. I've never created any kind of content in my life, but I sit down and I say, oh my gosh, I want to write a book. That sounds stressful. I'm not going to lie, that sounds really, really stressful. And the reason why I wrote this book at the time that I did is because I had already been producing podcast content for a solid year, like producing content. Actually, it was about 1.5 years that I'd actually had a podcast, but coaching and teaching and like reiterating and revamping and tweaking things and doing all that. I had already been doing that for at least 1 year. And then I was like, maybe I could write a book about this. And maybe not all of it was public, right? Like, because it wasn't until May of 2019 that I really put that stake in the ground, but I was doing all this behind the scenes. So I already had the knowledge. I understood my audience. I had the relevant content. I knew it was tested. That was the biggest thing, especially whenever it comes to books. I'm not going to go too far down like a writing journey rabbit hole because we could be here for hours. But I have gone to writing conferences. I've talked to literary agents. I've met with literary agents. I've done book proposals. I've done all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, one of the most important things that whether you're going the traditional route of publishing or self-publishing is you have to understand your audience. You have to know who you're writing for because, anybody could just write anything and sell it on Amazon. Let's go down the 99-cent ebook trail for a second because there's a lot of stuff out there. And you're like, oh, wow, this has not been tested. It probably doesn't sell either because no one's interested in it. So I don't want you going to the lengths of creating a book because I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was easy. Oh my gosh, it was not complicated. It was just very intense. Like if you're thinking about writing a book, it's not something that you can just say, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that in a weekend and I'm going to throw it up on Amazon. It's going to be amazing. No, that's not how it works. There's a reason why it took me 1 year to create Start a Binge-Worthy podcast. And it was because I really needed the relevant and tested content to be able to take that and create a book. So let's move on. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you have to plan out the journey. So when you're thinking about the relevant and tested content, there's a good chance you know your market. You know the person that you want to talk to. You know who's going to be reading the book, listening to the book, thinking about buying it. So you have to have that person, that ideal listener, ideal reader in your mind, because you have to take them on a journey. Like, this is for nonfiction book writers. I can't speak to fiction, right? I've never sold a fiction book, but I can tell you that from start to finish, they need to have a transformation. So with Start a Binge-Worthy podcast, if someone picks it up and they read it on page 1, I give them, like, in the introduction, like, here's the journey we're about to go on. And in the first chapter, we start at the basics, right? Base level. And we build from there. And I wrote that intentionally because I wanted it to be building blocks. You are laying the foundation for how a podcast will be. Like, when you get to chapter 15, you will know more than you did in chapter 7, and everything will build on top of the other. So when you have your content, right, you have your relevant content, your podcast episodes, your YouTube videos, your blog post, whatever that looks like, because you could apply this concept to all of those, but you have to map it out in a framework. And the framework for me, you probably already know this, but I'm going to tell you anyways, it's start, launch, and market. That is the baseline of my entire brand. Whether you're starting a podcast, you're starting a website, you're starting a business, you're like, whatever it is, those are the 3 steps. Start, launch, and market. You have to create it, you have to launch it, and then you have to continue to sell it and market it. So that's the whole premise behind all of this. So I want you to plan out the journey. What will the journey of the reader look like, right? Are you taking them from, hey, you're broke and you have no business, to, hey, I'm going to show you how to make your first $1,000 online? Or are you going to show somebody who is struggling, let's say, in a certain area of their life? Like, I'm thinking like lifestyle. So shout out real fast to Eva Walker. She's a personal stylist. She's a coach in this area of helping people really just find clothes that help them. And as of me recording this, I'm recording in my closet today, and I'm looking at all of my clothes and I'm looking at it like, oh, Eva, like, huge shout out. She has helped me realize so many things. She has taken me on this journey from being frustrated and overwhelmed with shopping for clothes, and I hate to do it, to now I look at my closet and I see opportunity, and I see like, oh, there is so many ways that I can change this up to make it more functional for me. And at the end, right, if we're going on a journey, the start was me being overwhelmed and frustrated. To the end, I feel more confident and I just know I have something to wear. Like, that is the journey. So I want you to think about, what is the journey you want your readers to go on? Okay, so let's move on to step number 3. We're still in the planning stages, okay? We haven't actually written anything. We just have our content and we figured out what is the journey from start to finish. So step number 3 is, I want you to add personal touch and stories. So like I said, we're talking about nonfiction here. We're not talking about fiction. Okay, like, here's another side note on my writing journey. I've written fiction stories. I've never published them. I have a children's book. I have a memoir. Actually, I have a memoir, and then I have based on a true story kind of thing, like, tucked away in my head. Like, I haven't written the whole thing out, but I want to talk about ways to add story and personal touch into nonfiction writing. Because I know a lot of you, like, some of y'all have boring topics. Like, I love you, but I mean, unless you throw your personality in it, it's kind of boring. Okay. Like, we're going to call it what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat things, but how do you make that interesting? You infuse examples, real life situations, stories, and personal, like, experiences that you've had yourself. So I want you to take that information, look at your old podcast content and say, how can I add more stories? How can I beef this up? Especially for those of you who do a lot of educating in your content, right? You're like, okay, here's 4 steps. Here are the steps. There we go. I want you to look at it and say, okay, here's the 4 steps. Here's how somebody applied the 4 steps, and these are their results. Or this is what happened when they didn't apply the 4 steps. Like, they crashed and burned, whatever that looks like for you. But you have to infuse stories and examples. And that's what I did all throughout Start a Binge-Worthy podcast. You will see examples from my personal life. You will see examples from like my own podcasting journey. I tell you stories about where I've messed up, how students and clients and members of this community have had experiences or tried things and they worked or they didn't work. So that's how you add in, like, it's not fluffing it up, right? Because we never want to just throw information in there, but it's making it more interesting. Because if you do have a boring topic, because let's be honest, podcasting could probably be boring. If you're learning it from somebody who doesn't have the passion or they don't have this kind of information about adding story to it, a podcasting book really doesn't get me excited. If I were just like, oh, here's 75 steps to start a podcast. Here we go. Read them. Yeah, there's 75 chapters. Just read 1-to-1. Like it's like a textbook. I don't want to read a textbook, guys. I'm done with college. I got my education. I'm good to go. But if you give me a book that says, hey, here's how to start a binge-worthy podcast, it's a lot more intriguing. And then you have to infuse your personality and the stories, because I'm just going to tell you, there's 20 chapters in this book. It is very basic as far as it could be a textbook, but I infused it with stories and examples. So that's step number 3. So let's recap. Number 1 is you need enough relevant content and tested content. Number 2, you have to plan out your journey from start to finish. Number 3, add more personal stories and a personal touch to it. So that's really like the start phase, the planning phase. And I didn't put this as a step because I kind of leave it open for however you want to translate this information, like how your brain works best. But I did all of this in Asana. You probably heard me talk about Asana before. It's a project management, project tool, like project planning. I literally created the book in Asana. When I say created, like the shell, right? Like I took the shell of all the ideas I had in my head, where I wanted it to go, what deadlines I had to meet. Like you should see it. It's pretty intense. I think I'm going to do a training just on the book Asana alone because it was pretty intense. But that's where I put everything. All this information I'm telling you, I did all of this. I planned all of it in Asana first before I ever started creating. We're about to get to the creating part, but this is the planning stages. So creation-wise, step number 4, I want you to transcribe your audio and then edit it. So this is where we're going to differentiate between someone who's been writing blog posts and creating audio or video, because it is different, right? Because if you have blog posts, the writing's done. Writing is there. All you got to do is tweak it and format it and move on to step 5. But I'm assuming you are working with audio or video, and you can actually transcribe those and turn them into text formats. Now, I'm going to tell you something. And it's the God's honest truth. And you're going to say, Krystal, that's cheating. And I'm going to say, I don't care because I got a book. Okay. I transcribed a lot of episodes of my podcast, a lot of my YouTube videos, and I even pulled a little information from my course, Profit Podcasting, to create this book. There is not a lot of brand new information in this book that I have not already created somewhere else. Okay. What I did is I transcribed it. Then I formatted it into, let's just go from step 4 is transcribe your audio and edit it. Step 5 is piece it all together and then edit and review, because that step 5 is where I have spent most of this year. Like once you're done planning it, you know what you're going to do, you know what content you're going to edit, you can kind of run with it from there. But I spent a good 8 months in just editing, reviewing, back and forth. I did hire a professional editor. I didn't do that with my first book. I self-published a book in 2017. I didn't use a professional editor. I used family members who have a background in English and technical writing. So I used my resources, right? You got to do what you can with what you have. But this year, I was like, no, I'm going to use a professional editor. And we just went back and forth after I pieced it together and I planned out, this is the journey I want the reader to go on. She helped me actually sound like a decent writer. I'm going to give so much credit. So shout out, Sarah. You did an amazing job, because once she sent me the edits back, I would read some of it and say, oh, wow, I said that? That sounds so good. And all she did was like change a little bit of the grammar, or like put what was at the end of the sentence to the beginning. And I'm like, oh, hot dang. That sounds really good. So that's where we are. So step 4 is transcribe your audio and then edit it. Step 5 is piece it all together and edit, review, edit, review, edit, review. And it takes a lot. And I'm going to go into a full-blown training later in November. That's actually the bonus. So if you're thinking about creating a book, right, and you are already creating existing content, or you think that this is something you want to do in the future, go to thebestpodcastbook.com and make sure you grab your seat in the free training I'm doing in November. If you can't make it live, there will be a replay. So you will get this as purchasing the book. It's my free gift to you. I'm actually going to show you all the steps that I did to create this book. But that was just one of the things. Was I'm going to show you how I went back and forth with my editor. I'm going to show you how I actually printed a physical copy of the book and what I did to make it easier for me to edit the thing, and so many cool things. So make sure thebestpodcastbook.com, register for this free masterclass. All you have to have is the your invoice number from Amazon and you got to put that in and you're good to go. Okay, moving on. Step number 6, launch it. So we went through the starting phase. All of steps 1 through 5 basically are part of start. Like you're either planning or creating. So that's starting. Number 6 is launch it.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
You cannot, I'm going to say this very gently, okay? Because there are some of you, right? You can put a product out there, whether it's a podcast, a book, a course, a membership, whatever it is. There will be some people that can just put it up and it flies off the shelf, right? Like people are just like begging, I cannot wait to devour this content. That's not the case for most people. Most people, it is not the if you build it, they will come strategy. You actually got to do some work in promoting it on the back end. Wait, is that the front end or the back end? You know what I'm trying to say? Before it's actually out into the world, you have to do some pre-launch before the launch day actually comes. So 10/20/2020, that is today's date as of this podcast episode dropping. That is today. I have been talking about this day for a year. I knew in September 2019 that this is when I was going to launch this book. I started talking about it really heavily in January, and then again in March whenever I got my edits back, and then whenever I got my first cover design back from my book designer. I have been talking about this book for a while. There's a reason. I didn't want this day to come and then someone say, oh my gosh, Krystal has a book? I had no idea. No. I wanted a good majority of my audience to be waiting, like anticipating, when is this book coming out? When can I get my hands on it? When is it going to be available? I want it now. That is the concept that I wanted with this book. And that is the concept that I suggest you have with anything you launch out into the world. But going back, if you go back to the beginning, to the planning section, You have to plan for that to happen. And I did all of this in Asana. I laid out my launch plan. What am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to? Am I going to send influencers books? Am I going to ask people to review the book beforehand? There were so many pieces that go into the puzzle to launch something, but you got to start thinking about that before you even write the book, to be honest. You got to know a few things. And when you set those deadlines, it holds you accountable. It makes you realize, okay, I can't just wing it. And I can't just say, oh, I'll do that next week. Oh, I didn't have time today. No. We're not going to half-ass it around here. We are actually going to go in and say, I'm going to do this. And this is the date that I have to have everything done by. And trust me, I have been stressed out the last week, trying to figure everything out and making sure, okay, it's ready. Okay, that's done. Okay, who do I have to email? I need to talk to this person, make sure I can do, it is a little bit more stressful and a little bit more pressure to put on yourself. But I'm just going to be honest, that's how I get shiitake done. That's how I get it out the door, is I have to hold myself accountable. So pick a launch date. Step number 7 is promote. Oh my gosh. So I have a megaphone from when I was a cheerleader, and I don't know why it's out in my house. I think I just recently put it in the attic, but I'm trying to remember why it was not in the attic in the first place. I don't remember if we got it from my parents' house, because I know recently, do y'all have that, right? Where you had all this crap at your parents' house and then they're finally like, oh my God, please just take this huge container, take it to your house because you don't live here anymore. You are 30 something years old. We don't need this stuff at our house. You have your own kids. You have your own stuff. We don't want your stuff at our house. Basically what my parents said. And I was like, okay, I guess. So I have a Tupperware container. My husband does too, upstairs. His mom did the same thing. It was like, here, take your crap, take it to your house. I don't know why, but we still have not gone through it. I'm scratching my head. I'm totally telling on myself now. I don't even know what's in there. I'm kind of scared to even find out what is actually in there, because I was kind of a paper hoarder for a really long time. So I could have actually I did open something one time and it was my entire 10th grade chemistry notebook, every single paper I ever did. Why, Krystal? Why are you a paper hoarder? Okay, anyway, so all of that to say, I have a megaphone. Oh, such a long way to say that. But I have a megaphone from when I was a cheerleader in high school. And this is what I imagine when I'm sitting here talking about promoting. You actually have to talk about it. Are you exhausted already from all the things? You have to plan it, you have to create it and transcribe it and then put it and edit and review and all the things. And you got to launch it and then you got to market it. What? I'm ready to take a nap. Y'all, I'm ready to take a nap because this book launch and creating the whole thing has there's just been so many times where I'm I really don't have to put it out. I could always push it off into next year. I really don't have to get it done, but I knew I needed to hold myself accountable. So getting to this part of the stage, this is actually the fun part. It's where I get to stand up with my megaphone and say, y'all, I just published a brand new book. It's called Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast. It comes out on October 20th, 2020. Go to thebestpodcastbook.com and I can do IG lives and IG stories and get on Facebook and YouTube and do all these fun things. But y'all, it's exhausting. I'm not gonna lie. You got to have a plan for marketing. You can't just hope that you're going to know what to do, and you can't just build it, they will come. You still have to talk about it. So going back, let's go all the way back up to the top, right? We're on step 7. If we go all the way back up to the top where we talked about planning and relevant content and testing things out, and if you have all of that figured out first, marketing and planning really does make it so much easier, because I know the listener's journey, right? The reader's journey. I can tell someone with confidence because I already knew the journey. It's oh yeah, when you read this book, you're going to know how to start, launch, and market a podcast. And when you walk away, you're going to feel more confident and you're going to create something that your audience craves every single week. I can say that with confidence because I thought about that way back in the beginning. And I'm talking about content that I really, really know inside this book. I'm talking about tested and relevant content that my ideal reader wants to know because I know my audience, because I'm obsessed with my audience and I study them and I know what their quirks are and where they get stuck. And I talk about all of that in the book. And that is what makes marketing so much easier. You have to think about marketing before you ever even create the thing. And I know that sounds like real backwards. It's like, what? You're thinking about step 7 when you're only in step 1 and 2? Yeah, you have to. You have to. And you have to just keep talking about it, keep putting it out there, and hopefully the right message will fall on the right ears and the right people will hear exactly what they need to hear from your content. Y'all, that's all I have for you today. I hope that you appreciate this conversation, this dialogue about creating a book from your existing content because I want to see more people do it. It's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's not impossible. And if writing a book, having an audiobook, an ebook, anything like that is on your bucket list, you want to have that done, this is the framework to follow to make it happen. So I want you to reach out in our Facebook group, the Profit Podcast Online Community. You're going to see a link in the show notes. So krystalprofit.com/episode 197. Reach out and tell me if that is one of your things. Like you want to actually write a book, start a book, plan a book out, whatever that looks like. Because I want to know if this is something that you want to see more content about this, because I'm having a lot of fun kind of pulling back the curtain and showing the behind the scenes of what this journey has looked like for me. But okay, let's do a quick recap and then I'm going to tell you about something really fun. Okay. So step 1, you need enough relevant and tested content. Step 2, plan out your reader's journey from start to finish. Step 3, add more personal stories and a personal touch to your journey, what you're talking about, your content, whatever that looks like, but add in more stories. Number 4, transcribe your audio and then edit it. Number 5, piece it all together. And then you're going to go back and forth, edit, review, edit, review, edit, review. Y'all, I went through like at least 10 edits of this book. I'm not kidding. At least 10 edits of this book. Number 6 is launch the thing. Number 7 is promote it. Okay, so those are the steps to turn your podcast content into a book. Now, because we launched the book today, 10/20/2020, we're doing a giveaway. And I've kind of teased this in the last few episodes, but like now I can really tell you what's going on. We are celebrating the book launch, okay, because the book is officially out into the world. You can purchase it, go to Amazon, go to thebestpodcastbook.com and place your order. But we're also celebrating the upcoming arrival of 200 episodes of the Profit Podcast. And I'm super pumped, crazy excited that we're going to, with 200 episodes. Are you kidding me? So that's coming up later in October 2020. So if you're listening to this later, like if it's like 2021, sorry, you've missed out. This giveaway is for a limited period of time, but you can go to krystalprofit.com/giveaway to find out more about how you can enter the prizes. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the prizes real fast since we have time and because I make the rules. So the grand prize winner, drum roll, please. Brrr, I was going to start banging on the counter, but then my dog will start barking and it's not going to work. So, grand prize. The grand prize winner receives, what do we have for him, Johnny? That's wrong talk show, right? I don't know. Now I'm thinking of Vanna and Wheel of Fortune. Okay, sorry. I'm like all over the place. The grand prize winner will receive full access to Profit Podcasting. If you are already a Profit Podcasting student and you win the grand prize, I have an even more special treat for you, but we'll talk about that if you win the prize, okay? So full access to my digital course, Profit Podcasting. You will also receive a one-on-one coaching call with me to go through your podcast plan, whether you are just starting, launching, or marketing your show right now. We're going to talk about all ways to improve it, strategize, whatever you want to talk about on a one-on-one call. you also get a signed copy of the book. So that is the grand prize winner. Go to krystalprofit.com/giveaway to enter. You're going to learn all the things about the entries. You can enter multiple times. It's going to tell you all the things you need to know. krystalprofit.com/giveaway, or you can go to the show notes. It's going to be there as well. But I'm going to have several other like runner-up prizes too. So you want to make sure that you're registered. We're giving away signed copies of the book. I'm super excited, y'all. This is going to be so much fun. The deadline is going to be further into October, towards the end of October. So you've got to make sure that you're paying attention. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. I'm going to give you all the updates. Make sure you're on my email list. So go to krystalprofit.com/episode 197, and there will be a way for you to get on my email list if you are not already there. But that's all I have for you today, guys. I know this was a huge promo for Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast, but it's launch day. Like, I have no other reason other than it's launch day, and I'm freaking excited. I wish I had my megaphone in here, but for your sake, I'm glad that I don't, because you would be bleeding from your ears if I screamed into my microphone. But I'm really excited. So go order it, thebestpodcastbook.com to order Start a Binge-Worthy Podcast, and then you can grab your free bonus gift, all the things. So thebestpodcastbook.com. But that's all I have for you today. And I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you go down the path of creating a book if that's something you want to do, because it is doable. That's all I have for you today, guys. So remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, "Send Krystal a text message." And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, "Send Krystal a text message." And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.